second featured reader is Anna Crowe. And of course, I'm going to introduce her as well. Anna Crowe is the co-founder of Stanza, Scotland's poetry festival. Her translations of the late Catalan poet Joan Margarit brought her a Society of Authors Traveling Scholarship in 2005. Margarit's two final collections were published in November 2021 by Bloodaxe Books as Wild Creature. Bloodaxe have published three previous collections of his work: Tugs in the Fog, which was awarded a recommendation for translation in 2006 by the Poetry Book Society, Strangely Happy, and Love is a Place. Anna has translated several books for ARC Publications: an anthology of Catalan poetry, 6 Catalan poets by ARC in 2013, a collection by the Mexican poet Pedro Serrano by Peatlands, the book is called Peatlands by ARC Publications in 2014, a collection of work by the Mallorcan poet Josep Luis Aguilo, Lunarium 2016, and a collection by the Catalan poet Manuel Forcano, Maps of Desire by ARC in 2019, awarded a PBS recommendation. She is the co-founder of Stanza, Scotland's International Poetry Festival, and served as artistic director for the first 7 years, from 1998 to 2005, and subsequently on the board of trustees. Her poetry has been translated and anthologized and recorded for the Poetry Archive. Figure in a Landscape was written in memory of her sister and in collaboration with the Mallorcan artist Andreu Maimo. Her third full collection is Not on the Side of the Gods by ARC 2019 and was described by the poet Stuart Kahn as offering an illuminating insight into the marvels of and uncanny links between the natural world and its creatures and the shifts of light and shade in our own lives. She is at present working on another collaborative book with Andreu Maimo to be called Words on the Wind, Paraules al Vent, to be published by Enciola. She was born in Plymouth, went to school in Marseille and Sussex, and read French and Spanish at the University of St. Andrews, where she lives with her husband, Dr. Julian Crowe. They have 3 children and 5 grandchildren. And of course, Anna, you get a reflection by me as well. And I want to start with a quote that I think Jen Hetfield wrote about your poem, Dove, Fig Tree, and Walls. When Crowe marks some quotidian familial encounter, is to try and measure loss. And yes, your poems do seem to pay attention, mindful and loving attention to what was. They reach back to the past and pull it into the present, or maybe pull the present into the past. Little by little, the body gives up its secrets, you write in the poem From the Hinterland. And from there, that poem continues to see likeness and semblance. And it struck me that your poems actually do the same, giving up their secrets little by little, pointing out similarities. And in that sense, I think these are poems of gain as well. And just on a side note, I love Calendar of Hares. I am actually reading right now the book called The Running Hare by John Lewis Temple. So I'm into hares at the moment. And your poem was a great, connection with that. So Anna, I have, of course, the same question for you that I had for Paula. April Fool's Day, what big twist or surprise did poetry have in store for you?
Well, I think it was probably in 1998 when Stuart Kahn and I both had a telephone call from the Catalan poet Francesc Parcerisas, who was reading at the Edinburgh Festival. And he asked both of us if we'd be interested in taking part in a poetry translation seminar up in the Pyrenees. And because neither of us at that point were translators, we thought he'd probably got us mixed up with somebody else. So we said, no, I don't think that's going to work at all. I think you got the wrong end of the stick. And he said, no, I think you have the wrong end of the stick. We want to translate your work up in the Pyrenees. And it was from going there that I decided when I came home that I would repay the compliment and learn Catalan properly and translate their poetry, which is how I became a translator. So from that strange phone call, which I didn't understand. It really changed my life completely. And I, gone in for translation ever since, and I love it.
That's so wonderful. And it's also such a great story. And immediately I've got questions about translations popping up, but I'm going to save them for the Q&A. But that, of course, is an interesting subject. Also, if you want to talk about trickery of language. But that's going to wait, because first we would love to hear you and your poetry. So please.
Thank you. And I want to thank you and Stephanie warmly for inviting me to come along and read, and to have this wonderful opportunity of listening to Paula read, which was tremendous. I don't know when I've heard such a great reading, Paula. That was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
So I think the first three poems I'm going to read do in some way all look at language or writing. The late Anne Stevenson, who gave me a lot of encouragement when I was beginning to write poetry. I'm a bit of a late developer, really. She has this wonderful poem called Making Poetry. And she asks, her poem begins, and what's to make? And she answers that question, to be and to become words passing weather. So here is my poem as a tribute to Anne Stevenson, Passing Weather. You hear their voices at the edge of sleep, birds calling from forest or coast, and sense they are waiting for a signal, a shift of weather or light, like a bright clearing, a bellboy's clang that will bring them tilting and swerving, composing an eye, a comma, a pupa, a leaf, in close up or distant, a dark murmuration that finds you and fills your ears and eyes and pulls you in to ride the storm of the poem with them, until they have shaped themselves to the sound, the being they want, and drop you. We're at war again in Europe. And so I thought I would read a poem I wrote at the outbreak of the Bosnian War. I was in Stirlingshire, and I was helping a friend to clean gravestones and to update the records of the Scottish Genealogical Society. So there we were in these little kirkyards cleaning the gravestones, and I found a most extraordinary thing, which I talk about towards the end of the poem. So this is Eve of Another War. In Milton of Balmaha, war creeps closer on mossy feet. The only sound, the water of Mar, thundering like artillery on its way to join the Endrick. I'm cleaning stones, picking at old badges of lichen. Recording names and dates, I uncover deaths from war and childbirth, epidemics, emigrations. When moss is scraped away, you see how memory is carved to make a bower over the name. Daughter, filling the stone from edge to edge. In quiet kirkyards by Endrick Water, a girl is hovering at my shoulder. One who crept away from the camp at Srebrenica while it was dark to hang herself at the wood's edge. Pink cardigan catching the morning light, closed flower among the branches. She blossomed onto Europe's front pages, unnamed and famous on our screens at evening. And when I kneel beside a fallen slab and peel back a thick rug of grass, there's a smooth brown underside, like common or garden underlay, a web of roots with mirror writing, words and numerals raised up in paler script, like Braille, where earth is searching the stone with the long blind fingers of grass for names, more names. And now some extremely old writing. I wrote this poem after seeing this extraordinary photograph of two pictographic clay tablets from Tel Brak in Syria, which are at least 6,000 years old. They are perhaps the earliest piece of writing that we have. I don't know, but I've called it A Shepherd's Voice. The river the clay was dug from has vanished, so we must imagine ducks squabbling among the rushes, the flight of cranes at sunset, night erupting with bullfrog cries. What scratched into the clay is a voice, a shepherd's, who declares, "Here are 10 goats, here are 10 sheep." His dry receipts remain to tell us that barren desert was pasture, watered, green. And though his flocks have shrunk to 2 baked bits of clay, what scratched there is the shepherd's voice, calling his beasts into our field of vision. Some lop-eared with thick brown coats, others whose big horns coil like rope. Here are 10 goats, here are 10 sheep, coming to drink, bells clunking, sending up bird cries. The reeds confer, the water laps. And my next 2 poems really look at different ideas of what we think of as home. So this next poem dates from a visit to Paris when we went to a wonderful exhibition in the Galerie Electra, an exhibition of the work of Jean-Henri Fabre, who was a real pioneer in studying insects, because he believed you should study them in their natural habitat alive, not kill them and put them in a test tube or something else. So here is a tribute to Fabre, and there were some amazing pieces of modern art that had been commissioned especially for the exhibition, and this is where I look at one of those. It's called Jeweler in the Galerie Electra. Under glass, as though in a cabinet of curiosities, dung beetles, crickets, mantises, bees and ants all swarm perfectly at home in Fabre's drawings and notebooks. Meanwhile, a caddisfly's live, ingenious larva is building a shelter in a tank of water. The insect makes its calm selection from a heap of curated materials, taking them as chance supplies them. It tweaks fragments into place with bristly forelegs, binding them with sticky threads of secreted silk into a tubular traveling house. This is built not from reed straws or the empty shells of pond snails, from which it made a splendid patchwork scabbard, says Fabre, but motes of gold and flakes of turquoise and carnelian, freshwater pearls, fashioning in its innocence a jeweled refuge. There was something very, very moving about that creature. It had no idea of what it was using to build, and it was beautiful. And my last poem, I'm going to finish after this one with a translation, but this is my last poem about a wasp's nest. In Scotland, we call them a wasp byke, B-Y-K-E. 3 times they have come to build in a house like a woman's aging body, its rooms emptied of children, their jars of shells and agates left like stretch marks, dusty books like scar tissue. Behind our bedroom wall, the wasps smelled out this numb crevice the body forgot. A motor revved at dawn, or sea far off, or fridge song by night had fanned to furnace strength. When I put my ear to the wall, the sound burned like shock. Not anaphylaxis, torpor and chill, but rage, desire, dangerous life. When I rapped with my knuckles, the clamour rose like fever until I thought they'd come bursting through lath and plaster. We had them poisoned. In the silence, I go on hearing them, persuading myself it's the sea, the beginnings of tinnitus. But this is a haunting, a memory from when my body sang like a taut string, alive, when you had only to lay your hand in love upon my skin and I burned. Thank you. So I work as a translator, always from Romance languages. I'm afraid I have no German or Russian, but I do translate from French, Spanish, Catalan, Italian, Portuguese. So I'm going to read a beautiful poem by Pedro Serrano, who is a great Mexican poet. And this is from the book Peatlands that came out from ARC in 2014. And it's called Feet. So the body is a prime concern for Pedro's work. And so we go from considering a woman's aging body to now look at his take on feet. And by the way, the wasps here are little tiny Mexican wasps that live among conifers. Feet clench, make themselves small, run away, creasing their wretchedness and fear in lines identical to those on our palms and different. Feet are extensions of God, which is why they are low down. Hence their distress, their rounded bulk, their lack of balance. Feet are like startled crayfish. Such vulnerable things, feet. When they make love, they clench and huddle together as though they were their own subjects. So feet are not made then to cling like wasps to every pine needle pin, to every branch of the soul that makes them there. They are more wings than feet, tiny and fragile and human, however much we overlook them. Thank you.